Hello, so I wanted to do a video talking about when you are ejected from the land. And this is because I have received and just been receiving so much over the last few months about how people are being called to move. And it's like there is this shift happening with the earth right now where it's like she's like, no, you're meant to be over here and you're meant to be over there. It's like this it feels like very kind of like Exodus kind of energies, and that's also happening to me. I'm in the process of moving and organizing, and the call just came so loudly for me. And I have had the experience before of being ejected, like from a sort of a vortex that I was in, and it very much feels like you spiral into certain places and then you spiral back out again. And sometimes I think it could be hard to like know. Sometimes it's like we sort of struggle to identify exactly what that feels like, because we have so much going on as humans. We're so multidimensional. There's so much like happening around us that sometimes it isn't always clear why we might feel a certain way. And so I want to share this video as a sort of maybe it has some clues for you about whether you're kind of in the right place right now. And so when I was in Costa Rica, and I went traveling in 2021, and I went to Mexico first, and I was there for quite a while, and then I sort of traveled down and went to Guatemala, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and I really loved Costa Rica, and it felt very like fruitful being there. And I must have been there for about 4 or 5 months and went to all these different places, and eventually ended up staying in the Diamante Valley, which is such a stunning so like fertile. The land there is just so fertile, and like you just feel it in the air. And I was living like deep in the valley. Like it must have been it was something like, I want to say a good 5 or 6 miles walk to the nearest main road, where you would get sort of a bus an hour and a bit into town or something like that. And I used to really sort of relish the walk, and you sort of hitchhike there as well. Like people are very sort of generous with lifts and things, because it's just that kind of place. And I remember it was like things just had been feeling a little bit flat for me. And I was like, right, I'm just gonna go into the town and maybe get some lunch, and maybe just try and like work through some of this stuff. And I had this like beautiful session with my friend who just brought through like the most beautiful healing for me. And it's like I was walking and I couldn't get a lift. Like I could not get a lift out of the valley. Like it was like either cars were just driving right past me, or they didn't have room, or it was, and I remember I just like burst out crying, and I called my mom, and I was just like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. I don't know what's going on. Like nothing's working out. And I got to the top of the road where you get the bus, and it's like I just missed the bus. And I swear buses were like every 3 hours or something there, and you didn't know if they were going to come or not. Like it was very little like regularity. And so I called my mom, and she was like, do you think you're meant to go somewhere else? And it must have just been this sort of impulse from my guides that I just hadn't been hearing, I hadn't been tuning into, or maybe it was meant to come through my mom, I don't know. But when she said it, it was like clarity. Like I was like, oh my God, I'm not meant to be here right now. Like I'm meant to be somewhere else. And I could feel it so strongly that was like the deepest resonance of truth. And so I ended up going back to Mexico. And it was one of those kind of experiences where it had just felt like nothing was working, like nothing was moving. And the answer was really quite simple about what it was I had to do. But we end up digging into all of this other stuff, like, oh, is it this, is it that? And actually it was just as simple as I was not meant to be in that country at that time, and the land was trying to show me like, look, the vortex is closed for you here, leave kind of thing. That I wasn't picking up on I wasn't being receptive enough to those messages coming through. And I think it can be difficult as well when we're kind of in a bit of an in-between space. Like that's kind of where I am with Scotland right now, is like I have maybe a couple of months left here and I just feel the energy is like, oh, like it's just not moving in the it's like the land, me and the land are not in alignment. And it's even like when I feel on my sort of like my axis, it's like I keep wanting to like veer in the direction of where I'm moving to. And like it's like my whole body is being like, and my soul is being like magnetized elsewhere. It's so interesting. And I definitely felt kind of like this when when I decided to travel to Mexico, but I just didn't I didn't have the same kind of connection with the land sort of 3-4 years ago as I do now, whereas now it's just so palpable. And although I'm still doing sort of grid work and stuff here, certain ancestral spirits will come to me with certain things, or etc., but it's not in the same way. And what's happening to me is I'm being primed for where it is I'm moving. And every night when I go to sleep, I get all of these codes coming through from the place where I'm moving, and I hear the land like talking to me, and whereas I'm not hearing the land so much here. And it's so interesting because there's so many different ways that this can play out, and in terms of like where it is that you are called and why, because and when, because there's so many different reasons why someone might be called to a certain place or a certain piece of land, because it could be past life, it could be ancestral, it could be a total mix of various different things. It isn't always just clear cut like that. And that's why I think as well, I covered this in a post I did on Instagram where I was kind of talking about this, but is this sort of idea of nationalism and sort of patriotism. These ideas are such strong inversions of what it actually means to be connected to the land. Just because you were born somewhere doesn't mean that place has the codes that you need at that time. It might be, but it may also very strongly not be. It might be somewhere else on the other side of the world. And we are only ever stewards of the land. Nobody owns the land. Even if you buy a house and you buy a piece of land, you are stewarding it. You're never, you're not going to be on it forever, because as humans we die. And so I think it's always so important to remember that we're only ever custodians, and to treat the land with that kind of deep level of reverence and respect that the land has called you. We don't choose the land chooses us. And often when we try and choose the land, that's when things are out of alignment, or things won't settle in, or it feels very forced. And, some people live in a state of forcing their whole lives, so it's not going to feel any different to them necessarily than the kind of life that they live anyway. But when we're living in that deep kind of in that way of being deeply attuned to our soul, and really listening to the whispers, it can sound like of our soul, then we're going to find ourselves moving in a different way and being guided in a very different way than if we are trying to force and we are trying to create going, I'm just gonna move here and just that's it. It's about answering a call. The land is always calling us, rather than we are necessarily choosing and deciding for ourselves. So that's all I really wanted to share. So yeah, if you're kind of in between vortexes right now, so am I. I feel you. I am so in between, but it's also beautiful. We have to honor that liminal space, because there's so much beauty happening within that as well. And also if you're in that place of like knowing that you're not where you need to be, but it hasn't opened up for you where it is you're meant to go, just be patient. It'll often come in the way that you least expect. That's what happened to me, completely unexpected. And I'd known for probably like a year that the vortex was closing for me in Scotland, but I didn't know where it was that I was going to go. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, dropped in, and it was clear as day. So yeah, sometimes you just have to just be patient And it's in that patience that we reap those beautiful rewards, rather than trying to force and trying to kind of force our way into places. Just allow the place to welcome you and to open up to you. So thank you so much, and take care. And if you have any questions about this is literally one of my favorite topics to talk about. If you have any questions, then just leave me a comment or send me a message, and take care.